See, I don't need a microphone. Years ago in the military school and other things. My name is Bear Baker. I am, for reasons beyond my understanding, the Dean of the College of Business and Public Policy here at the University of Alaska Anchorage. And I welcome you to this panel on the presented by the ANCSA 40 Committee addressing ANCSA and the pipeline. It's my pleasure to have you in our building and in our facility. Tonight our panel features Senator Mike Gravel. I grew up here. I should know better.
You can get away with that in California, but you can't get away with it in Alaska.
My father reminded me that we knew when I was a child. So, Mayor Edward Enoch, historian Jack Roderick, and writer Tim Radner. Tonight's panel is moderated by Nellie Moore, a journalist with outstanding credentials. She has participated in written, radio, audio, and video media over the years. She is well known for her national, local, and statewide coverage of news and particularly Alaska Native affairs. And while originally from Kotzebue, today she gets to take care of her grandchildren, which is something I would love to do. And I'm having my first one in July, so
wonderful.
I'm looking
Anytime
forward.
you need advice, just call me.
I will, believe me.
And save lots of money.
I have a daughter. I've saved lots of money. Well, no, it's cost me lots of money over the years. So
yeah.
I do understand. I'm saving lots of money for the grandchildren. So, no, thank you. Yours.
Thank you very much for coming this evening. I really thank you for that thorough introduction compared to these very prestigious individuals on both sides of me. I know it's a Friday night, but doing this ANCSA 40 series for me has been really interesting and a lot of fun. I was telling Mayor Ita we have a tough act to follow because our last one was the women of ANCSA, women behind ANCSA, and Frances Dignan, who was here, was one of the panelists, and Brenda Ita, the mayor's sister, he was just telling me that she was talking, he grew up with 7 sisters. And Mrs. Ita is here as well from Vero Elsie. I wanted to thank our sponsors, our friends and neighbors who have made this possible. They come from many different corners of our business community. The Siri Foundation, Sea Alaska Corporation, Huna Totem Corporation, Kewaunee Broadcast Corporation, the Alaska Humanities Forum, the UAA College of Business and Public Policy, and Native Student Services, and we thank them all for this. And we've got some more panels coming up in the fall, and we hope they continue to support this very interesting series. I wanted to start out with Tim here to my left, and just to get us going. I also want to let you know that we will be taking questions from the audience late in the show. Every one of you should have a white card nearby your seat, so if you have a question, write it down at any time and raise your hand, and volunteer. Who are the picker-uppers? A volunteer will collect it from
Rose back there.
Okay. So feel free to write out questions. Since we're podcasting and broadcasting and all kinds of casting, we're going to try to keep it rolling. Otherwise, it would be tough to have a late setup for the audience. But thank you all for coming very much. Tim, let's get started. You and I have been talking about this for a long time and planning. ANCSA in the pipeline. You're a business journalist and know a lot about it, and you grew up here.
Nellie, my perspective, I've been following and observing and writing about the Claims Act and obviously the pipeline and the history of the oil industry for many years. I was fortunate years ago, back more than years than I'd like to remember, to have worked on the Tender Times for Howard Rock in the 1960s, and then I worked for the Newsmiter and then later for other newspapers. But I followed the early Native Claims movement, the Native Claims Act. I went to work for the oil industry. I was with BP during the during some of the final action of the land claims and was in Washington, D.C. when the Pipeline Act passed. So I got to observe a little bit of the action and the connection between the two. And I think a couple points I want to make just to kind of start us out is there's an important linkage in history that it's too easy for us to forget, and that's that the land claims led to the passage of the Trans-Alaska Pipeline Act, which Senator Gravel was one of the prime sponsor. There's a direct connection between the two, and then further there's a connection with ANILCA. So each one grew out of the other. And the land claims was a resolution of a long-standing Aboriginal land claims. It was a settlement agreement, but part of that was the provision of Section 17D2 in the Land Claims Act set lands aside for study for national parks and wildlife refuges. That led eventually to ANILCA in 1980. But along the way, to get the land claims, to get the pipeline, the Alyeska Pipeline Service Company had to get secure title across lands. And to do that, they had to settle the land claims. So there was a point in time, and I think Senator Gravel will be able to talk about this, there was an important point in time when the oil industry swung around and became a strong supporter of the settlement of the land claims to get the pipeline. And then, of course, as probably we'll be able to talk about a little bit further, the oil field and the state of Alaska paid for a big part of the cash settlement of the land claims. Came in the form of a royalty override on the Prudhoe Bay field. So each one sort of fits together. Each led to the other, and each reinforced the other. The pipeline of the startup of oil production provided the cash that helped fund the early foundation of the corporations. Not all of it, but half of it. So that's kind of to set the stage.
Thank you. Earlier today, I had an opportunity, and sorry, I sound very late. Finally realized I should stop hollering. And we had a really interesting conversation. I wanted to go back to the 60s and talk a little bit about how you got elected, your interest in election, and how that sort of tied in with the work that followed into the land claims, all of that.
Well, in Anchorage, I got elected because I went door to door. When I came to Alaska, I didn't have anything, and so how do you campaign? And I wanted to run for office. I was ambitious, make no mistake about that. And so I went door to door, and in my third try, I ran for the territorial legislature, I ran for the city council, and then I ran for the state legislature, and I finally got elected in a plurality. I was probably number 6 in getting elected in the state. Then after serving 2 years, when Bruce Kendall was the speaker, and had a good enough record of activity and participation, that I ran again and became the top vote getter in Anchorage, and then parlayed that into becoming the speaker. So I went from a freshman to Speaker of the House. Well, obviously, it was a very acrimonious kind of situation. You don't rise that fast without stepping on some people. After 2 years, and one of the things I'm very proud of is that I reorganized the state legislature. When Bruce Kendall was Speaker, he had no office. There was a payphone outside the chamber, and the rule was that Bruce had first divvies to get to the payphone if he needed it. When I became Speaker in the first year, there was a closet next to that payphone. It was a big utility closet, and we could barely fit a desk in there, and a person could sit at the desk, but nobody else could come into the closet, and so somebody sat out there. That was my first office as Speaker of the House. Now, and so you can imagine from thence forward, we were able to, with a very controversial legislative session, we turned around and we redid the entire legislative floor of the legislature, and that set in motion the development of the members of the legislature being able to have staff, offices, to be able to do a job of representing the people. and not, hanging out there. And so then, as a result of that, I got deeply involved with the regional land claims, the regional high school, and fought that, and several other things. Here again, it was the motivation of a political person being ambitious, wanting to get ahead. So we had to have accomplishments to be able to show the people, here, promote me to a higher office because look at the good job I'm doing at this level. That's the way the mind functions of politicians. And I see some very interesting politicians in this audience. and so from that, when I ran for Congress against Ralph Rivers, I was a Democrat and I was prepared to sneak through to get ahead. And I ran for, and what I did is I figured out that in Anchorage I could go door to door, but there's even a better device than that, and that was to go to the villages. And I had a friend by the name of Barney Gottstein and Larry Carr, and Barney had several airplanes, and so I used these airplanes to go to the village. And what I was explaining to Nellie early, what it was you didn't have to campaign. You just went to a village and showed that you cared. You didn't make any speeches or anything like that. You just showed you cared. And it wasn't a sympathy showing, it was an empathy. There's a big difference between those two words. Empathy, you treat them as equals. Sympathy, I'm poor, unfortunate people. And so by going to the villages and just asking very respectfully, I'd like your support, and listening to them and learning about your problems firsthand. When Nellie this morning at the end of our interview, she said, what was the most important thing that occurred to you that changed your life as an Alaskan and as a representative? And I thought for a moment, and it was that. It was going to the villages and learning about what was going on in rural Alaska. Oh, I knew what was going on in Anchorage, in urban Alaska, but rural Alaska was way over here and was not being recognized at all, by and large, in urban Alaska. And so in that election, I almost won. I came out of nowhere and literally almost won. That changed the whole dynamic of people looking at rural Alaska as a political power base. And so what happened, it's not a coincidence that the AFN was formed in 1966, that year right after my efforts to get elected into the House. And so it was the conscious effort of a political person giving recognition to a part of the Alaska populace that was really not represented in the way it should have been. And so as a result of that, you saw a lot of these young people. All of the young leaders who are now mature leaders in Alaska, I came into contact. Willie Hensley, John Borbridge, Schaefer, you name it. Frances Degnan, who's right there, her family in the university. For me, it was a revelation. And what it did for me, and this is a political conscious decision that I made, and that was that if I get into a position of high power, whatever they need, I will be for, just automatically. And because you can't make a mistake in voting for these issues. Now, it damaged me in Anchorage. I never carried Anchorage in a statewide election, which is interesting. And I managed, and so, and of course I was very controversial. And I think we'll get into other facets of this. You know, as I know, I had a reputation for filibustering, and I can do that for you on call. But let me just close there, and she can spoon feed us on other issues. And I want to hear from the good mayor here.